Welcome to this module on building a brand narrative. In it, I present an approach to branding and marketing that is based on the idea that customers' lives are lived within their own personal narratives or stories that guide their every choice and action. In this view, we choose products and services that fit or improve the results of our narratives. This presents incredible opportunities for us as entrepreneurs, product or service developers, and marketers, as you'll see shortly. As a note, this work draws heavily on the work of Donald Miller as presented in his book, Your Story Brand. I highly recommend the book to all marketers. So far in the development of our marketing, we've worked on creating a brand name for your product, a logo for it, a color scheme, and a tagline, all designed to create an easily identifiable brand identity. But we've got a lot more work to do. You've also generated a customer persona, a deep understanding of a very specific customer, but a customer who also, on some level, represents many, if not most, of your other customers. We know that person's name, we know their background, we know their skills and experience, we know how they live, what their life looks like, their goals, we know what they're thinking and feeling, and we know their pain points. And out of this knowledge, we can learn a lot about how to market to them. We've also mapped the customer's journey from unawareness of the problem to problem awareness, to brand awareness, to purchase, and to becoming a loyal customer. We've also mapped the thoughts, feelings, pains, and gains at each stage of the journey. We'll use what we develop in this module to populate the tools we choose to use for our marketing funnel to recruit a customer's attention, engage them in our brand, and convert them to being customers. Here's what we'll use as the basis for creating content for our funnel. Through understanding our customers and their particular journeys, we'll develop one or more narratives or stories about that journey. The narratives will present the problems that they face along the way and how they can use our brand to solve those problems. We'll show them how great their lives will be with our brand. This narrative will provide us the basis for developing specific excerpts or pieces of content to move them along the journey to our brand. I want to start with a brief discussion of the what and why of narratives. So let me tell you a story, or better, let me have you tell you a story. This morning, you started your day by getting out of bed, at least I assume so. You got out of bed because why? What prompted you to get out of bed? What was your purpose in getting out of bed? What did you do next? And why did you do that instead of doing something else? Did you go for coffee first because in the morning you need your caffeine? Or did you brush your teeth first because in the morning your mouth doesn't taste so good? You're right now watching and listening to this presentation. Why? What made you decide to watch this presentation instead of watching TV? What will you do after you've listened to this presentation? And why will you do that? Each of those questions can evoke an answer in the form of a story. In fact, each of the actions you took are part of a story about how you live your life. You get up in the morning, you take a shower, you have coffee, you eat breakfast, you go to school. Nope, not these days. We're living in a different narrative these days. You go to your computer, you fire up Zoom, you go to your first class. etc. Each day, most days at least, we get up, eat breakfast or not, go to school or work or not, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. Our choices of what to do and how to do it are given to us as narratives. Many of these narratives are taught to us by our parents. Think about look both ways before crossing the street, or you have to go to school to get ahead, or they're given to us by our friends, or maybe we make them up ourselves. But those narratives tell us what is right and what is wrong, when to do what, how smart we are, how ambitious we are, and what laundry detergent to use. Sports are narratives. As we were told in the movie Bull Durham, baseball is an easy game. You throw the ball, you hit the ball, you catch the ball. Of course, the real narrative for baseball is much more complicated, but it's still a narrative that tells us at each step of the game what we're supposed to do next and how to win. Decisions are narratives too. Every decision we make is driven by our narrative about how we live or would like to live our lives. So if we want to change people's behavior, like get them to buy our product, we have to change their narratives. I like to think of marketing as it is being practiced today as something I call behavioral marketing. In behavioral marketing, we're directly trying to influence behavior. We're trying to get them to click here, and then click there, and then click here, and finally click on the button that gets them to buy our product. Rather than marketing as it has been practiced, which focuses primarily on influencing attitudes. The narratives that we live in determine our behavior, and so if we change that narrative, we change the behavior. So we can look at marketing as influence being about our ability to engage our customers in a narrative that is attractive to them, that includes our product as an integral component. For example, if you want to sell air travel, don't show them pictures of cruise ships. The human brain is a pattern engine. It's not a ledger. If you ever wondered why accounting is so hard to learn, the human brain is not built for accounting. The human brain is built for stories. So marketing based on features and benefits is much less effective than marketing that is based on stories and based on enrolling customers into your narrative. So marketing then is about enacting a narrative that customers want to live in and that includes your product or service as an integral part of making that narrative successful. So, how do we build a narrative? Let's take a look at that. What are the elements that make up a story? Think about that for a moment. I'm going to present one way, a very powerful way, of presenting your brand as a story. That story is going to provide you with the messaging you'll use in your marketing and the context that you'll use to present that messaging. And I'll show you later how this way of formulating marketing messaging is perfect in our digital age. But let's start by thinking about the elements that make up a narrative. If you were going to write a story, what would you need to have in it? This is a good place to pause this video for a moment and think about that question. You're about to write a story. What are some of the things that you're going to need in order to be able to construct a story? We're going to use a particular narrative form that is called the hero's journey. This form was articulated excellently by Joseph Campbell in his book called the hero's journey. Campbell looked at ancient mythology, particularly Greek mythology, and the patterns of those stories, and realized that those patterns are very powerful patterns in guiding our lives and our choices. So let's look at a particular narrative, a modern example of this that was created in the movie Star Wars. In Star Wars, we had a hero, and our hero had a goal. But there was a villain. Darth Vader was out to stop our hero from attaining the goal. And along came Obi-Wan Kenobi, who tells our hero about a secret that allows the hero to defeat the villain, attain the goal, and live happily ever after. A very simple narrative, yet a very powerful narrative. So let's think about who's going to be the hero in our narrative. All narratives in the hero's journey are built around a hero. And think for a moment, who's going to be the hero in your brand narrative? Most people immediately think, well, of course, our product is going to be the hero. And that's a first mistake. You want your customer to be the hero. Your customer will always be the hero. And we're going to have to be very careful not to make our brand the hero. Our brand is the instrument that our hero is going to use to succeed. So our customer is the hero. And the goal, of course, is what the hero is trying to achieve in the context of our product or service. Our hero is trying to quench their thirst. They're trying to successfully entertain friends. They're trying to attain wealth. They're trying to live long and prosper. Our hero, however, is beset by a villain, or there may be multiple villains. And that villain may be a person or a thing or a circumstance. The villain may be, my stomach is growling. The villain may be bad breath. The villain may be almost anything. We're going to focus in your marketing ultimately on one villain at a time. And as you build your initial narratives, I would suggest that you start with a single clear villain. But you may find other villains along the way. Now, along comes a guide. Now, who's going to be the guide? We've already identified that the customer is the hero, and your product isn't a guide. Well, maybe it is if it's a certain kind of product, but really the guide, that's where you come in. That's where your company comes in whatever guise it appears. Sometimes it is the company, Amazon, or sometimes it's a salesperson for your company, or sometimes it's the website for your company, or your advertising. But the guide is going to be your marketing communications to the customer. And that guide is going to share a secret. And that secret is your product or service. It's the secret to the hero's success. That secret, your product, your service, allows the hero to defeat the villain. Now, be careful with how I articulated this. I didn't say that your product or service defeats the villain. No. You want to make your customer the hero, so your product or service is going to be the tool they use to defeat the villain. And by that, attain their goal and live happily ever after. And the happily ever after, of course, is life with your product or service. So now you need to think about who are the characters in your brand narrative. You've already got a customer persona to be the hero. So we're going to lean on that customer persona again. You want to think about What are the villains? What's the problem or problems that your customer is trying to solve that are getting in the way of them attaining the goal that they want to attain? How are you going to guide them? What is the tool you're going to use for reaching out and guiding them? And there may also be supporting characters in the narrative. The hero may have a family or friends or business associates or others who interact with them and are important parts of your brand narrative for that customer persona. You're going to need a plot line. You need to help your customer understand the story by connecting the dots. What's the situation in which the customer finds him or herself when he or she identifies the goal? And how does the villain threaten them? How does she or he use your product to defeat the villain? And what does happily ever after look like in your brand story? Here's where the customer journey comes in. The narrative is your customer's journey through the stages. The problem is the villain. The solution is, be careful, using your product. The outcome is problem solved. Some things to keep in mind. Going back to that, your brand narrative provides the core of your marketing and sales messaging. This process, where we have a specific customer persona, we have a specific customer journey, and now we have a specific brand narrative for that persona on that journey, and that gives very specific messaging that we can provide to the customer. This is much more powerful than simply saying, well, we're going to advertise on Facebook. Your brand narrative needs to be built into every communication. You can feature the characters on social media. Your website can be built around your brand narrative. Your marketing collateral gets designed from your brand narrative. The way that you sell to the customer is enacting the narrative with them. And let's look at why I think these narratives work and work powerfully. Remember, we live our lives according to internalized scripts that direct our choices. What we like and the reasons why we make choices are actually just rationalization of our choices. The choices are given to us by the narratives that we're creating as we go. If we can create attractive scripts or narratives that buyers will identify with, I want to be that person. I want to be that hero. Why do you think they use Michael Jordan to sell basketball shoes? And we make our product or service an integral part of making that script work, achieving the goal. Then they're going to jump in and choose our brand. Now, I'm not going to go into great depth in this, but this is something you should pay a lot of attention to. A great villain is really important. There is a whole developed psychology about gains and losses, and it shows very clearly that we are far more motivated to avoid losses, to avoid the negative, than we are to achieving gains. Think ancient man who was highly motivated to not get eaten by the tiger. If we get eaten by the tiger, all bets are off. So that's incredibly important. So your villains are very important to the effectiveness of your narrative, and a great villain can be incredibly effective for your marketing. So think about what you create as your villain and how you articulate that villain. A great quote from Peter Diamandis: our brains pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. So, here's the assignment. You know the pattern. Your assignment is to create your own narrative. Figure out who is the hero, what's the hero's goal, what are the villains that are stopping the hero from achieving that goal, what form does the guide take, and what is the holy grail, the secret, your product, that leads to the hero attaining the goal. I want you to write this out as an actual short story. It doesn't need to be the great American novel, but it needs to have enough detail in it so that it hangs together as a story. And this narrative you're going to put on the About page of the website that you're going to create in short order for your business. Good luck. Be well. Stay socially separated, but stay connected. And we'll see you on Tuesday. That's all, folks.